I stood in silence, my gaze resting calmly on the gaps between the vibrant red silk curtains fluttering faintly in the evening breeze. The scene was the epitome of extravagance. The high society of the werewolf world certainly knew how to flaunt their prosperity. Yet, within me, there wasn't the slightest ripple of emotion. Alpha. It was really nothing more than a title bestowed upon the one carrying the weight of an entire pack's survival, a title meant to inspire loyalty and demand respect for a leadership bloodline. But at the end of the day, it was just an empty vanity. I didn't even fear the vampires or hunters lurking out there in the dark, let alone the gossiping aristocrats in this hall. But to say I felt absolutely nothing would be a lie. The pressure from the Pack Council was a cruel, suffocating weight. 3 months. Those old fools on the council had given me exactly 3 months to find a mate. If I failed, they would strip me of my leadership and carve up my small, vulnerable pack. I felt like a condemned prisoner walking toward the guillotine, and my only way out tonight, ironically enough, was Victor Abeda serving under the Westwood banner. Soon. The melodic ballroom music was drowned out by the sound of footsteps and crude laughter approaching my alcove. From a distance, I spotted Victor swaggering out from the corner of the hall. I frowned as the figures drew closer. I saw Victor dressed in an expensive suit, a wine glass in his left hand, and his right arm wrapped tightly around the waist of a scantily clad female werewolf. Every step he took radiated an arrogant, cheap aura that made me sick to my stomach. Bastard. Was this supposed to be an engagement discussion he had brought his mistress just to parade his dominance over me? In that moment, something clicked. It seemed the rumors about the rot within the Eastern Wolves were exactly like this. Lyra, darling, waiting long. Victor approached, flashing a smile that, to my eyes, looked exactly like a beast baring its teeth at cornered prey. He didn't even bother removing his hand from his mistress's waist. To the ignorant, he might have looked somewhat respectable, but to someone as perceptive as me, it was glaringly obvious that he viewed me as nothing more than a bargain, a desperate female alpha forced to lower her head to an arrogant beta pup. Get to the point, Victor, I said, my voice flat, arms crossing over my chest. He let out a loud laugh, leaned close to his mistress, and then glanced at me. All right, the proposal I accept. Your pack will be under Westwood protection, but let me be clear, this marriage contract doesn't affect my personal hobbies. I marry you so you keep your alpha seat. But this little girl, he patted the mistress's rear, will still be the one warming my bed every night. You're an understanding alpha, right? I thought to myself, does this trash really think he can step all over me? I had always told myself my greatest fear was losing my pack. But standing before this scum, I knew with absolute certainty that I could not endure this. If I swallowed my pride and walked through his door tomorrow, I would be turning myself into a beast of burden for him to trample on. Just as his filthy lips prepared to curl into another triumphant smirk, I didn't hesitate for a second. I snatched a glass of red wine from the adjacent table and dashed the dark crimson liquid straight into his face. "Ah!" the mistress shrieked, scrambling backward. The surrounding area instantly fell into a dead silence. The music seemed to stop. Dozens of eyes turned toward us. "What the hell are you doing?" Victor roared, wiping the red liquid dripping from his nose onto his expensive dress shirt, his killing intent flaring thickly around him. "I am Lyra Wilder, alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack." I stepped forward, closing the distance, my eyes as cold as an abyss. No matter how small my pack is, no matter how cornered I am, it is not the place for a guard dog like you to stand here and bark. The engagement is off. Having said my piece, I refused to waste another half second in this foul place. I turned on my heel and strode swiftly toward the darkened hallway. It wasn't a retreat, but I needed to leave. Though my pride was temporarily satisfied, the cruel reality crashed over me like a bucket of ice water. I had just severed my pack's only lifeline. Despair gnawed at me. I walked with my head down, my mind a blank slate, only wanting to escape the Westwood estate. But I hadn't gone far. Right at the bend of the marble corridor. Thud. I crashed into a wall of solid muscle. The impact was so forceful I nearly fell backward, and the wine glass in the stranger's hand sloshed over, soaking a large patch of his crisp white shirt. "Watch where you're going." Already nursing a belly full of fire, I snapped without thinking. The man before me didn't take a single step back. Under the dim light of the wall sconce, I looked up. In that moment, I froze. Standing before me was a towering man in a custom-tailored black suit. His facial features were sharply defined, his amber eyes as cold as a 1,000-year-old frozen lake. But what terrified me wasn't his appearance. It was the invisible pressure radiating from him, an overwhelmingly dominant aura, a masculine energy so thick it threatened to crush any resistance. This feeling, I had only ever sensed it from the legendary prime alphas. His presence was hundreds, thousands of times more potent than Victor's. He looked down at the dark red stain on his shirt, then slowly shifted his razor-sharp gaze to me. "Sorry," I swallowed hard, alarm bells ringing in my head. The instincts of an alpha told me this man was not to be offended. This was Derek Westwood, the ruler of the Eastern Territory, the most powerful wolf in these lands. I'm dead. I thought I just offended his beta, and now I've thrown wine on the alpha of this entire estate. I really dug my own grave this time. "Lyra Wilder." His voice resonated, hoarse and carrying an unpredictable cadence, entirely devoid of the anger I had anticipated. He knew my name. I took a step back, my hands unconsciously clenching into fists, preparing for the worst. "It is I, Mr. Westwood, regarding what just happened in the hall. If you wish to settle the score on behalf of your subordinate, I will accept the consequences." Settle the score. Derek's lips twitched upward into a very faint smile, whether in mockery or amusement. I couldn't tell. He slowly unbuttoned the stained collar of his shirt, speaking leisurely. "I have no interest in the affairs of a disobedient dog, but I saw how you handled the situation. Quite decisive." I furrowed my brows, unable to gauge his endgame. "What do you mean?" He took a step forward, closing the gap between us. That oppressive aura washed over my face again, making it slightly hard to breathe. He lowered his head, his lips hovering near my ear, his voice calm but carrying the weight of a mountain. "You need a mate to keep your pack from the council's grasp, and I need a wife in name to prove my stability, to secure the empty seat on the National Wolf Council." He straightened up, burying both hands in his pockets, his amber eyes piercing straight through me. "A business transaction. We fake a mating for 1 year. You get absolute protection under the Westwood name. No one will dare touch your pack. In exchange, you play the perfect mate in public. What do you say?" Hearing his words, my mind practically exploded. Become a son-in-law, number a wife to the Westwood family, become the fake mate of the most terrifying wolf in the East. I looked at him, a myriad of conflicting emotions rising within me. I didn't know if he had some deeper, darker scheme, but right now, I knew clearly I had no other choice. Just go with it. I gritted my teeth inwardly. At worst, I was selling myself for a year in exchange for my family's survival. I took a deep breath, raised my chin, and met his gaze. Deal. The moment the word deal escaped my lips, the air in the corridor seemed to freeze. I thought he would look smug, or at least smirk, but he didn't. Derek Westwood's chiseled face remained as cold as glacial ice. He merely gave a curt nod, a subtle glint flashing in his eyes, as if cornering an alpha of another pack was a trivial matter beneath his notice. "Tomorrow morning, my lawyer will bring the detailed contract to your territory," he said, his tone entirely devoid of emotion, exactly like a man closing a real estate deal. Prepare yourself, Lyra Wilder, in 3 days. We will hold the wedding and perform the claiming bite before the entire Eastern elite. 3 days so fast. Damn it. Was this a mating or a military draft? But I had no right to object. Standing before a powerhouse like him, the initiative had long since slipped from my grasp. I swallowed hard, forcing a calm expression. Understood. I will prepare. I brushed past him, intending to leave this suffocating mansion as soon as possible, but I hadn't taken more than a few steps when heavy, thudding footsteps echoed from behind. It was Victor. The scum rushed out from the main hall, the red wine stain still prominent on his face, his eyes bloodshot with killing intent. He had clearly felt humiliated in public and was looking to settle the score. "You bitch! You think you can throw wine in my face and just walk away?" he roared, his wolf claws extending from his fingertips. "Let me tell you, your pathetic pack will be crushed by the council tomorrow. You'll be begging on your knees to lick my boots." Before he could finish his sentence, a terrifying pressure suddenly erupted in the space between us. A dominating aura surged forward, forcing me to stumble half a step back, my chest tight. Derek strolled out from the shadows of the corridor with just one glacial glance. Victor was silenced instantly, his body freezing as if paralyzed. The killing intent rolling off Victor was utterly crushed by Derek's aura in the blink of an eye. "Victor," Derek said blandly, devoid of anger yet chilling to the bone, "from this moment on, Lyra Wilder is my fiancée. You are raising your voice at the future mistress of this estate." Victor's eyes bulged, his mouth dropping open into a perfect O. He stammered, trembling, unable to believe his ears. Mr. Westwood, are you joking? She's just a washed-up alpha." "Get out." A single word fell from Derek's lips, carrying the absolute command of a supreme alpha. Victor's face drained of color, turning as pale as a corpse. His knees nearly gave out. He immediately tucked his tail between his legs, stumbled backward, and fled without daring to look back, leaving even his trembling mistress far behind. I stood there, silently marveling. I couldn't deny it. Borrowing someone else's absolute power felt incredibly satisfying. After being oppressed for so long, watching my enemies scurry away like a defeated dog was a massive release. But simultaneously, I realized a cruel truth in this chaotic world of wolves. Absolute strength dictated everything, without backing, without power. The title of alpha was just fish on a chopping block. That night, returning to the Crescent Moon Pack's territory, I locked myself in my study. The pale moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating the piles of documents on my desk. My pack consisted of fewer than 50 people, mostly the weak, the elderly, and the young. They called me Alpha. Looking at me with reverence and hope, I laughed bitterly at myself. Selling my life into a fake marriage with the most dangerous man in the East, was it a blessing or a curse? The rumors about Derek Westwood in the underworld were plentiful. He was ruthless, cold-blooded, and merciless. His enemies ended up crippled or utterly eradicated. Why would a man like him need a fake marriage contract, even if he claimed it was for a seat on the National Wolf Council? I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't that simple. When I stood near him in the hallway, beneath that towering facade of power, I had astutely noticed that his aura seemed unstable. It surged violently, but had moments of fragmentation, like a massive dam struggling to hold back a breaking flood. Was he hiding a secret? Forget it, I told myself. Knowing too much gets you killed early. My only job is to play the part. The next morning, true to his word, a sleek black luxury car parked outside my pack's gates. A stone-faced lawyer handed me a thick stack of documents and a contract. The clauses were laid out with chilling clarity. No interference in private lives. Act the part of a loving couple in public. Obey all his commands in social settings. And, crucially, we must complete the claiming bite on our wedding night to blind the council's spies. Seeing the words claiming bite, My heart skipped a beat, and the hand holding the contract trembled slightly. In the werewolf world, the claiming bite was the most sacred and terrifying ritual. It wasn't merely a physical marking of territory. It forged a soul bond between two individuals, even if it was done out of necessity. A bite from a powerful, dominant alpha like Derek would brand my soul, leaving an indelible mark. It would create a fatal tether. His emotions, his thoughts, even his pain, I would be forced to feel a fraction of it all. If my soul wasn't resilient enough, I would be subjugated by instinct and forced into complete submission. This was no different from handing over half my life to a devil. Miss Lyra, Mr. Westwood sends his regards. If you are hesitating, this agreement can be voided right now. He dislikes indecision, the lawyer said coldly, pushing up his glasses. I looked up and out the window. Down in the courtyard, the pack's children were playing carelessly in the sunlight. If I refused, in 3 days, their smiles would be ripped away by the council's claws. I gritted my teeth, my knuckles cracking from how tightly I clenched my fists. Once you ride the tiger, you can't get off. Having stepped onto this pirate ship, I could only tell myself to keep my sanity intact and absolutely refuse to let that bond manipulate my mind. Who said I was hesitating? I sneered, picking up the fountain pen and slashing my signature across the bottom right corner of the page. Tell your boss that Lyra Wilder will be there on time. Just 1 year, endure it for 1 year, and I would take my freedom and my pack and leave. But as I set the pen down, I couldn't possibly know that this step was plunging me into a bottomless abyss, a gamble where not even the gods could predict the outcome, and the thing I stood to lose was likely much more than just my freedom. I sat in silence, my eyes fixed on the tiny cut on the palm of my hand. Blood oozed out, dark crimson drops rolling slowly onto the polished mahogany desk. A mere scratch, accidentally caused by the lid of a cigar box. For a normal human, it was a trivial injury. But for me, an alpha. A man pulsing with dominant energy and terrifying regenerative powers, this was a living nightmare. By all rights, this wound should have sealed and scarred over in the blink of an eye. Yet, 5 minutes had passed, and the blood kept flowing, carrying a creeping chill straight into my marrow. My strength was draining. The overwhelming pressure that had forced thousands to bow was now slipping from my body day by day, hour by hour, like sand through my fingers. No one knew this. No one in this chaotic, dog-eat-dog world of ours was allowed to know that the most brutal wolf of the Eastern Territory was slowly becoming an invalid. Click. The sound of the door opening severed my train of thought. Ryder, my most capable beta, and the only childhood friend I trusted, stepped in. He frowned slightly, catching the faint metallic scent of blood in the air. His eyes instantly locked onto my hand, and his expression darkened terribly. The wound still isn't healing. Derek, Ryder approached, his voice low, heavy with extreme tension. When did this start? Last week you were still... 3 days ago. I cut him off flatly, calmly pulling a white silk handkerchief to press tightly against my palm. The deterioration is faster than anticipated. It seems my time is running short. Ryder slammed both hands onto the desk, grinding out every word. Then how do you explain this insane contract with Lyra Wilder, a fake engagement? You know full well the council is eyeing that empty seat. If they find out you mated just for show, they'll use it as an excuse to tear this territory apart. Her pack is too weak. She brings you absolutely zero political advantage. I looked up at Ryder. He was right. Completely right. To the ignorant. Snatching a fiancé away from a subordinate like Victor to make her my wife looked like the arrogant whim of a tyrant. But to me, it was a desperate retreat. Do you think I have any other choice? I tossed the blood-soaked handkerchief into the trash and leaned back into the sofa, offering a cold smile. The Westwood family curse you know it better than anyone. Before my 30th birthday, if I do not find my fated mate, the wolf bloodline within me will extinguish itself. I will be stripped of all my power, my aura, will dissipate, and I will become nothing more than a frail mortal." Ryder fell silent, his fists clenching tight. This was my family's fatal secret, a venomous curse rooted hundreds of years in the past, forcing those of Westwood blood to trade absolute power for something called true love. It was laughable. In a world teeming with betrayal and deceit, true love was nothing more than a fairy tale for pups. "Yesterday, I slipped into Death Valley to see the old witch," I continued, my voice flat, though an undercurrent raged beneath it. I demanded he use forbidden magic to seal the curse, or at least delay it. What did he say? A glimmer of hope sparked in Ryder's eyes. In the supernatural world, witches always had ways to turn the tides, even if the price was usually exorbitant. He refused. I closed my eyes, recalling the old, wrinkled face and milky eyes of the witch. He had said magic can manipulate the soul, but it cannot deceive the bloodline. This curse requires the resonance of two souls willingly merging into one. If you use dark magic to force it, the backlash will devour you instantly. The only way to survive is to find your true mate, someone who loves you enough to die for you. "So you chose Lyra Wilder, so?" Ryder frowned, confusion written all over his face. "But she isn't your fated mate. It's just a contract. She signed it for her pack, not for you." "Exactly. She doesn't love me. And I don't need her fragile affections." I opened my eyes, my gaze as sharp as a blade. What I need from Lyra Wilder is a perfect shield. Those old fools on the National Wolf Council have already caught the scent of my weakness. They are delaying my appointment because I lack a mate, because I lack stability. I need Lyra to fill that void. She's cornered. She's decisive, sharp, and she knows her place. A fake mating will buy me the time I need to deal with the council and secure the Eastern Territory while I figure out a way to break this curse. Ryder let out a heavy, exhaustive sigh. He understood my dead end. When a man standing at the pinnacle of power is about to plummet into the abyss, he will grasp at any branch, even one covered in thorns. "Tomorrow, you have to perform the claiming bite with her," Ryder reminded me, his voice laced with anxiety. "You know how brutal that ritual is. It will forge a soul link. If your spiritual energy is unstable, sharing a connection with another alpha could injure you, or worse, she might sense your weakness." "I know." I stood up, walking toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting my gaze out over the pitch-black pine forest resting in the quiet night. It's a gamble with my life, but I have no way back. Tomorrow, in front of the entire Eastern elite, I will claim her. I will use the last of my dominant aura to smother her, forging a fake bond strong enough to blind them all. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, the image of Lyra Wilder, alpha of the Crescent Moon Pack, suddenly flashed through my mind. Those defiant eyes, the arrogant splash of wine, and the decisive way she said "deal" in that dark corridor last night. This soul contract was, inherently, a cruel exploitation. I was using her as a political shield. She was using me as a protective umbrella for her pack. It was a fair transaction. Nobody owed anybody. Yet, deep down, when I thought about my fangs piercing the pale skin of her neck tomorrow night, blending our blood and souls, a strange, restless feeling flickered to life. It felt as though I was personally opening Pandora's box, containing something that not even the gods could control. Less than 2 months remained until my 30th birthday. If this gamble failed, I wouldn't just lose my power, I would drag Lyra and the entire Eastern Territory down into a sea of blood. 3 days passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. So fast I barely had time to register existence. Everything occurred in a hazy blur, like a dream. There were no wedding jitters, no joyous anticipation lingering in my heart. There was only one naked truth, suffocating me. I was personally nailing my fate to the massive shadow of the Westwood family. Standing before the large gilded mirror in the estate's bridal waiting room, I stared at my reflection. The pure white satin wedding dress clung to my curves, the back plunging low to reveal smooth, bare skin. My long hair was swept up into an elegant updo, adorned with tiny diamonds that sparkled like fractured stars. Expert makeup hid the exhaustion lurking in my eyes, making me look every bit the perfect aristocratic lady. Perfect, radiant, but entirely empty. "You look so beautiful, Alpha," a young maid from the Crescent Moon Pack whispered, her voice choking with emotion. "You will undoubtedly be the most beautiful bride in all the Eastern lands." I looked at her through the mirror and offered a forced smile. What good was beauty in a world where claws and fangs dictated everything? Beauty was just cheap jewelry hung on the weak. "Thank you," I replied softly, reaching up to touch the cold silver crescent moon pendant resting against my collarbone. "How is everyone at the pack?" "Everyone is safe. Alpha, ever since the news of your engagement to Mr. Westwood broke, the council hasn't dared to send a single person near our borders. Even Victor has vanished without a trace." Hearing this, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. At least my sacrifice was worth it. My pack was safe. That was all that mattered. As for me, I just needed to play my part for the next year, and then it would all be over. Click. The waiting room door opened. A wolf dressed in a black suit entered, his demeanor respectful but his eyes cold. "Miss Lyra, it is time for the ceremony. Please proceed to the main hall." I took a deep breath, smoothed out my dress, nodded, and followed him out. The main hall of the Westwood estate was decorated to a point of suffocating opulence tonight. Thousands of candles flickered, casting a golden glow that reflected off the antique oak-paneled walls. The guests were the titans of the Eastern werewolf elite, dressed in expensive formal wear. They held their wine glasses, whispering among themselves. When I stepped out, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Every eye locked onto me. There was admiration, curiosity, but mostly, it was scrutiny and judgment. I knew what they were thinking. They wondered why Derek Westwood, the ultimate cold, ruthless, and highly eligible bachelor, had suddenly chosen a female alpha from a nobody pack as his wife. I held my head high, my back ramrod straight, walking slowly down the long red velvet carpet stretching from the entrance to the altar. No matter how much turbulence churned inside me, outwardly, I had to maintain the pride of an alpha. I would not allow anyone here the chance to laugh at me. However, as my eyes swept over the altar, my footsteps involuntarily halted. It was empty. Derek Westwood wasn't there. The room instantly dissolved into murmurs. The whispered gossip began to erupt, growing louder by the second. Where is Mr. Westwood? Did he change his mind at the last minute? How could a powerful alpha like him actually mate with a weakling like her? It has to be a joke. The sharp whispers pierced my ears like thousands of needles. I stood rooted to the spot in the middle of the hall, my hands gripping my bridal bouquet so tightly my knuckles turned stark white. This humiliation. Was he trying to make a fool of me in front of the entire world if he didn't show up today? What would happen to my pack? The council would rip us to shreds the moment the sun rose. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes passed. My patience reached its absolute limit. Anger ignited in my chest. That bastard. If he dared to trick me. I swore that even if it cost me my life, I would drag him down to hell with me. Just as I was about to turn on my heel and walk away from this ridiculous farce, the grand double oak doors of the hall burst open. A freezing gust of wind from the night rushed in, carrying the scent of frost and the faint, unmistakable metallic tang of blood. Derek Westwood stepped inside. The entire hall fell dead silent. No one dared utter half a syllable. The invisible pressure radiating from him weighed heavily on the room, forcing the weaker-willed to subconsciously step back. He wore a pitch-black tuxedo, his towering figure standing resolute like a god of darkness. His chiseled face maintained its usual cold, ruthless demeanor. His razor-sharp amber eyes swept across the hall, finally locking onto me. But something was wrong. Even though he was trying to mask it under a veneer of absolute authority, my sharp alpha instincts caught the anomaly. His normally surging, dominant aura seemed thinner. His breathing was slightly labored, though only imperceptibly so, and most tellingly, his skin was unnaturally pale, as if he had just survived a grueling, bloody battle. The scent of blood I had caught earlier, was it his? He walked toward me, his stride still steady and commanding. When he stood before me, he offered no apology for his delay, nor did he spare a single tender look for his bride. He simply, coldly, extended his hand. "Begin," he ordered the presiding elder, his voice thick and hoarse, carrying a meticulously hidden exhaustion. I took his hand. His large, rough hand was freezing cold. That icy chill seeped straight through his flesh and into my heart, causing an involuntary shiver to run down my spine. A dominant alpha should never have a body temperature this low, unless he was heavily injured, or his power was draining away. But I had no time to dwell on it. The elder's resonant voice rang out, reciting the ancient vows of our kind. The sacred words echoed through the vast hall, intertwining with the frantic beating of my own heart. "Now, you may proceed with the claiming bite." The elder's declaration sounded like a final judgment, cutting off all paths of retreat. I swallowed hard, closed my eyes, and tilted my head slightly to the side, exposing the pale, most vulnerable skin of my neck. I had mentally prepared myself for the pain, for the erosion of my soul when his bite pierced my flesh, creating a fake but binding tether. He leaned in, his hot breath ghosted over my ear, his signature scent of cedar and mint, now mixed with that faint metallic blood, enveloping my senses. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, his voice so deep and raspy that only the two of us could hear. And then, his fangs sank into my neck. Pain erupted in a blinding flash, tearing through every layer of composure I had painstakingly built over the last few days. Derek's sharp fangs pierced the delicate skin at the side of my neck, sinking deep into my rapidly pulsing vein. I bit my lower lip until it bled to swallow a whimper, my hands instinctively clutching handfuls of his black suit jacket. But the most terrifying part wasn't the physical agony. The moment my blood mixed with the marking venom of an alpha, a surging, wild, and fiercely possessive power suddenly flooded my veins like molten lava. It was a brutal invasion of the soul. My entire body trembled violently. My mind felt as though it had been thrown into a massive vortex of energy. I felt the darkness, a profound, freezing darkness, filled with absolute isolation and a despair so deeply hidden it was suffocating. These were his emotions. Through the newly formed tether, Derek Westwood's mental defenses seemed to crack open just a fraction, enough for me to taste the inner world of the East's most terrifying monster. Why would a man who held the power of life and death, standing at the very pinnacle of authority, harbor a soul so dark and riddled with insecurity? What was he so afraid of? His breathing grew heavy, and the arm wrapped around my waist tightened, squeezing so hard I thought my ribs might snap. He seemed to be pouring every last ounce of his strength into this bite, desperately trying to carve his mark into my soul to blind all the prying eyes watching us. The intensity of the ritual far exceeded anything I could have imagined for a fake contract. It wasn't just a superficial bite for show. His alpha energy ground against my own, generating a fierce heat that incinerated my senses. The primal, wild sensation tangled with the excruciating pain left me dizzy, my legs turning to jelly, forcing me to lean entirely against his broad shoulders just to stay upright. And then, he withdrew his fangs. I gasped for air, my chest heaving, one hand flying up to cover the bleeding bite mark on my neck, the other still gripping his jacket. Gasps of shock and awe rippled through the hall. The yellowish candlelight illuminated the dark red, crescent-shaped brand on my neck, raw and radiating an overwhelming dominant energy. It was irrefutable proof of the bond between two alphas. No one in this hall could doubt the authenticity of this marriage anymore. They had been thoroughly deceived. I looked up, intending to say something to play the part of a wife who had just undergone a sacred ritual, but the words caught in my throat. Derek's face was ashen, his sharp features pulled taut as if he were enduring agonizing pain. His normally cold amber eyes were cloudy, swirling with an indescribable chaos. He looked at me, a complex emotion flashing through his gaze, part helpless resignation, part disgust. Without waiting for the elder to conclude the ceremony, and completely ignoring the scattered applause beginning to ring out, Derek Westwood abruptly turned his back. "Enjoy the reception. I have matters to attend to." He threw the cold words over his shoulder, his pitch low but carrying enough force to cut through the hall's noise. Then, with long, hurried strides, he walked away. His black cloak billowed in the night air, and his broad back was quickly swallowed by the shadows of the corridor, leaving me standing alone at the altar under the curious, scrutinizing gaze of hundreds. Humiliation crashed down on me once more. That bastard, he claims me in front of the entire Eastern elite, making me his rightful mate, and then instantly abandons me alone in a room full of hungry wolves ready to tear me apart. Was this the protection he promised in the contract? Or did he think I was just a wooden puppet, incapable of feeling pain or shame? Mr. Westwood is undoubtedly occupied with vital council matters. Please, everyone, enjoy yourselves. I gritted my teeth, forcing the most elegant smile I could muster, bracing myself and using whatever alpha aura I had left to suppress anyone considering stepping forward to mock or interrogate me. Clinging to my last shred of pride, I turned on my heel, lifted the heavy skirts of my wedding dress, and strode out of the hall, heading straight for the side door that led to the residential suites on the second floor. All down the long, echoing hallway, not a single servant dared block my path. The newly formed bond throbbed in my mind, transmitting a cold, hollow sensation and a dull, inexplicable ache. I pushed hard against the door to the bridal suite, a lavish room overflowing with deep red roses, suffocatingly thick with the scent of essential oils and candles. Slamming the door shut, I leaned back against the heavy ironwood, slowly sliding down until I hit the freezing floor. Raising a hand to touch the inflamed bite mark on my neck, I realized with bitter clarity I had succeeded in saving my pack, but the price I was paying seemed far steeper than I had ever imagined. On this fake wedding night, in this massive but lonely room, I felt for the first time just how terrifying a soul connection could be. Through that invisible tether, I knew Derek Westwood wasn't far. He was somewhere in this estate, and he was in agony, a visceral, agonizing physical pain that tore at the soul. So intense it rebounded into my own mind, making my chest clench involuntarily. The most powerful wolf in the East. What horrifying secret was he hiding beneath that flawless exterior? And this bond, how deep into the mud would it eventually drag me? I buried my face in my hands, exhaustion and confusion swallowing my mind, praying only that this night would end quickly.